You Booked It, episode 132. What's going on, everyone? Thank you for joining me today on You Booked It, the #1 podcast where you learn how to create a successful entertainment career. Every episode is a masterclass on how to move your career forward. And if you want even more, head over to youbookeditpodcast.com and join the email community where we dig deep into what you can be doing right now to help book that next gig. And now, let's do this. Okay, let's get started. I am excited to introduce my guest today, David Vogel. Are you ready for this, David?
I am ready, Dane. So excited to be here.
Right on. Glad you're here. Dave is a graduate of the Boston Conservatory with a BFA in musical theater. He has worked extensively in and out of New York City, whether it be Broadway, tours, regional, or overseas. Within a year of graduating, Dave was graced with the opportunity to join the national tour of Chicago, the musical, where he eventually made his Broadway debut in the New York company as a vacation replacement. After almost 4 years of working in many different productions of Chicago, including performing on the largest ship in the world at the time, Dave took the artistic leap and moved back to the city to audition for other projects. Since then, Dave has worked regionally in such productions as Les Mis at North Shore Music Theater, Grease at Pioneer Theater Company, and most recently as King Arthur in a newly adapted version of Camelot at the Farmers Alley Theater in Michigan. Dave is currently living in New York City with his husband Matt and cannot wait for a safe return to theater. Dave, that is a quick intro of who you are and what you've done, but why don't you tell us a little bit more about yourself, fill in the gaps, and a little bit more about what you do as a professional in the entertainment industry?
Sure, Dane. As an entertainer, my main focus is musical theater. Growing up, I'm originally from Rochester, New York. I caught the theater bug very early. My mom really pushed me into it. She was a lover of classical musical theater growing up in high school. It was always a question whether or not I wanted to go into opera musical theater. The Boston Conservatory was the perfect school for me because they really had a wonderful hand in. I really loved all of the vocal teachers at the conservatory. They really focused on a really big in-depth classical repertoire. So that was a good thing for me. What else? Yeah, musical theater is my main focus. Again, classical musical theater.
Beautiful. Let's move on to our first section here. And Dave, look, I am a sucker for a good quote. What is your favorite quote you'd like to share with everyone?
Well, not to be cliche, but I'm sure many actors do say this, but I found that throughout my career, this quote has come up so many times, especially in big crossroads of my career. And it is, "To thine own self be true," William Shakespeare, and said by Polonius in Hamlet.
So good. And can you expand on that a little bit, on how that has been influential throughout your career?
Yes. I would say the first time that came up was actually as I was doing Chicago the musical. So I was probably going into my third year of performing in the production, and the role I performed was Mary Sunshine. And the role is a really interesting role. It's a role I never thought I would play. It's a male soprano who is dressed up like a woman, and Billy Flynn reveals the in quote, female reporter to be a man at the end of the show. And I was so happy with this, but getting into almost 4 years of performing in it, I'm so grateful for the opportunities that this brought, but I really need to take a moment and be like, is this actually what I want to do for my entire career? And when I really thought about it and really thought about what is true to me and what is true to my aspirations for this industry, I realized I needed to just take that leap, and I needed to be true to myself, and I needed to try to expand my versatility as a performer.
Yeah, I'm really glad you brought that up, because we are a weird breed, us entertainers, and we all have our own different relationship with work, I believe. Because look, there are plenty of entertainers out there that you're totally happy if you get that great show, whatever it might be, and you're happy to be in that show for the majority or the bulk of your career. That's totally cool.
Exactly.
There's nothing wrong with that. But also know that if you are in a role and you've been doing it for a while and you're like, oh God, I feel like I need to do something else. I feel like I need something. That's not an uncommon way to feel as an entertainer. I know myself personally, clearly yourself as well, Dave, that doing things for too long, the same thing, as much as you love it and as grateful as you are for it, you're like, I'm still a creative person. I need to do a new project, something that is going to fulfill me in a different way or make my creativity work in a different way. And I think that's very common for us entertainers. And I think the normal muggles of the world might see that as super unreliable and just a bit chaotic or frenetic, but it's just how we continue moving forward. It's how we progress through our lives.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah. And let's move on to this next section here. And Dave, of course, you are an entertainer. I'm an entertainer. And I think that you'd agree that this industry can be one of the most subjective, brutally honest, personally emotional industries in existence. And you know as well as I that in order to create and have a successful career in this industry, like you're having now, takes a lot of dedication and hard work. And while, yeah, there's an outrageous amount of fun and excitement being an entertainer, doing what we do, there are also our fair share of obstacles, challenges, and failures we are going to experience and we're going to have to move forward through. So tell us, what is one key challenge, obstacle, or failure you've experienced in your career, and how did you come out the other side better because of it?
Oh, that's a tough one.
I know, it's a full-on question.
Yeah, again, I think every individual is different. And ironically for me, if we were to say, oh, with my career, what was the most notable credit to date that I've been graced with so far? Honestly, that role has proved to be my biggest obstacle in the industry. And I love that you said this industry can be one of the most brutally honest. It just really makes you take a deep, hard look at yourself. And as happy as I was to receive such an opportunity at such a young age, this specific of a role really pigeonholed me in a way in terms of many casting directors' visions of me. And, I was 23 at the time, and I'm in my early 30s now, and I'm still trying to change perceptions that were made of me 10 years ago. If we think back to what we were like 10 years ago, I'm completely different.
Right. I don't even have hair anymore. Well, I've got a few. I got a bit. Let's be honest.
I've seen you. I know you have hair. But yeah, and my hair is gray, by the way, so everything changes.
Indeed.
But I would say a more personal note was my weight, honestly, has been an obstacle. And I feel that I was able to, once I was taking in that, wow, people are really looking at me in a specific light, I've learned through that obstacle that I need to take control of whatever I could take control of. So I would say at least the last 4 to 5 years, fitness has really been something that's helped me try to deal with that obstacle.
Yeah, it's so good that you brought that up because you said take control of what I can control. And that's the important part because there's so much of this industry that is so far out of our control that to worry about it is almost a waste of time. And the hard part about that is that we want to pay attention to the things that we can't control because they're the big things. Did you book the contract? Are you the right look for the contract? You want the job or whatever it is. Those are that's the stuff that you want to focus on because that is more or less the end goal. But all of those things are so far out of your control that you have to remove yourself from them and look at just yourself personally. What can you do to improve your skill set, the way you look, and what you bring to the table?
So much easier said than done.
Oh, 1,000,000%, 1,000,000%. And it takes daily practice, doesn't it?
Yes, 100%.
Yeah. Let's move on to a time that I like to call your spotlight moment. That one moment in time you realized, yes, I am going to be an entertainer for a living. Or maybe it was, yes, this is what I need to be doing as an entertainer. Tell us about that.
Like what I said before, there was never really a time in my life where I didn't think that I was going to be a performer. My mom has told me stories of when I was 3 years old that I was jumping around singing all of the songs from the Disney films and that I'm like, oh, I've seen pictures. So yeah, that must be true.
Yep,
But
yep.
also the biggest joke was that I was singing before I was talking. So I was like, for those 3 years of not talking, I've certainly made up for that now. So I would say it just was always instilled in me, literally, since I can remember. But I would say my it moment for me
Yeah.
was when I was about 9, I want to say. There was this, I want to say it was the 1994 symphonic recording of Jekyll and Hyde came out. And it
Mm.
was with Anthony Warlow and Linda Eder. And I heard this song, This Is the Moment. And I went, oh, Mom, I really want to buy that recording. And she was like, oh, Jekyll and Hyde, I don't know if that's appropriate. So she was like, sure, yeah. So we bought it. And I would literally listen to it in the car on repeat over and over again. And I fell in love with Anthony Warlow and Linda Eder. And then we made our first trip as a family to New York City in 1997 for around Thanksgiving, I want to say. And Annie was playing at the time with Nell Carter. And my mom was like, oh, we should go see Annie. And I was like, no, I want to see Jekyll and Hyde.
Yeah, I've been listening to this CD.
Like on repeat over and over. So she, took me to see Jekyll and Hyde. And when I saw that show and Robert Cuccioli singing This Is the Moment, I was like, that is my it moment. That is my, I need to do this for a living.
Oh, that's so good. I love it. And you got the show you wanted.
I know, who can say that? Not many.
All right, let's piggyback on that real quick and talk about your number one booked it moment. Walk us through that day, the auditions and callbacks, if they happen to be a part of it. What was going on in your life, and what about that moment makes it your favorite booked it moment?
All right, so I'm going to ask if I can give two, but I'll give them because they are equally important to me.
Yes, of
I'm going
course.
to make them very quick, though. Okay. So the first one was when I booked Chicago. It was an incredible day slash months because there was a little bit of a waiting period. But I remember that I was literally finishing doing my children's theater works tour, and it was our final performance, and it was in Long Island. And I had to somehow do the performance at 10 a.m. and get to Ripley Greer Studios in Midtown by 2 o'clock. So I remember we did the show, we packed it up, and we were in traffic. And I was freaking out. And I literally walked up to the floor of Ripley, walked in, sat down. And as soon as I sat down, the monitor came out and said, David Vogel. And I didn't even get to warm up that part of my voice yet, this high soprano falsetto extension. And I was just like, oh, we're just going to do this.
Let's do it.
And honestly, looking back, I think that's actually what benefited me was that I
Yeah.
didn't have time to overthink it. So I walked in and it was the amazing Duncan Stewart was sitting there and he just smiled and he just played the first chord, the accompanist, and I just sang. I sang the cut. And when I finished, Duncan just said, great. And then he said, can you come back at 4 o'clock today? And I was like, oh, sure. He
Hmm.
was like, it's nothing big, just come back at 4. So then I was like, so I remember I was just like wandering around Midtown for an hour.
Like,
And
great.
then when
Now
I
what do I
walked
do?
in, right. And I called my agent, my manager at the time, excuse me. And he was like, okay. He was like, yeah, that's fine. He was like, it'll be fine. And then when I walked back at 4, I saw there were like 10 other guys. And I'm just sitting there waiting. And the monitor comes out, calls a name. That guy goes in, closes the door. Within a minute, that guy walks out. And the monitor comes back and says, actually, can we just see David Vogel? And I was like, oh, okay. And then I walked in, and it is the music director of Chicago, Duncan Stewart, and other members of the creative team. And I had to sing again. And then she warmed me up. And then she made me sing the end of the song 3 times in a row, which is just all these high held A flats.
Yeah.
And then it was just a surreal moment for me. And then she said, okay, that's great. She was like, wonderful to meet you. And then I walked out. It was a Friday. And I remember on Monday, my manager called me and said, you are on the short list. And the
Cool.
short list meant whenever there was an opening in the currently running tour or the Broadway company, I would go in. And then I was just on hold for 2 months, just sitting and waiting. And then I
Oh
finally got a
my
call.
gosh.
It
You
was
must have been, were you just like couldn't sit down almost? Gosh.
oh, it was a very hard part of my life because I was just like, I'm just waiting. And then, yeah, I got that magic call in mid February that I would be flying out to join the tour. And they were so happy that they decided to also give me my Broadway debut when they wanted to move the current Mary Sunshine, Ryan Lowe, who is fantastic. They wanted to move him to the tour when they were doing LA. So I got my Broadway debut.
Oh, that is amazing. And how was that transition going from the tour to Broadway?
I actually, so I did my last week of tour. I did 8 shows. I was in Tucson, Arizona. I finished my 2 show day on a Sunday. I went home, went straight to bed. I had to get up at 4 in the morning to get on a plane.
Mm-hmm.
I flew from Tucson to New York. I was immediately got in a taxi, went to the theater. I had a quick put in because there is a slightly different staging
Yep.
between the tour and New York. And then I went on that night.
Whoa. Talk about a whirlwind.
Yeah, it was surreal. It was a very crazy 24 hours.
I would say so. And what's the other one?
So there was that. But I would say, in all honesty, my most artistic booked it moment was these last few years. I've really focused on, we talked about it earlier, versatility, and I really wanted to push myself. And my agent sent me this audition for a production of Camelot. And Camelot, again, classical musical theater has always been my favorite. And I grew up listening to Camelot. My dad is a big sports guy, but randomly he loved Robert Goulet and he loved Richard Burton. So he would play Camelot, but then he would be watching the 49ers play. I was like, okay.
Yes, he's like, I love that Camelot song. Camelot.
Yeah. I was so excited. And I remember it was a video audition. And video auditions have always been, they just have always freaked me out. I just was like, this is not my favorite. I'm like, all right, it's fine. So I was like, this is, if anything, I took myself out of it. And I was like, I'm just going to use this as a learning experience. And I'm going to make myself be more comfortable on camera. And it was a huge audition packet. I want to say it was just under 15 minutes of material.
Wow.
And it was crazy, but I really worked hard on it. I got coached on it. And lucky enough, one of the scenes I needed a Guinevere. And I was like, you know what? My best friend, Lauren Lukasek, will make me calm. So great. I'm going to have her be my Guinevere. So I did the film, waited like 2 weeks, didn't hear anything. And then my agent called me a week later and said, so they want to know if you're still interested. And I just was shocked. I thought it was just a nothing. And then I said, of course. And then 2 days later, I got the phone call and I booked King Arthur.
Oh, very cool.
So
Love that.
that felt like a personal triumph. So that's why I had two.
Yeah, absolutely. Two very distinctly different ones. So good.
Yes.
And let's take a moment to talk about the present. What projects are you working on now? What are you looking forward to? And it's a weird time, right? We are amidst this global pandemic. How do you see the entertainment industry moving forward in the next couple of years?
In terms of keeping busy during this crazy time, again, I think the biggest thing is that I've really tried to focus on what keeps me mentally and physically healthy. I've really thrown myself into this amazing workout program that's actually been awesome for a lot of people in the arts community. It's called Built for the Stage. It's by
Yeah?
Joe Roscoe. Yeah, you can follow him on Instagram at Built for the Stage. It's incredible. And I've always been one that has struggled with yoga or meditation. I've always
Right.
wanted it to work for me. It just wasn't for me. And this workout program, the structure of it, and just pushing yourself to personal goals, it's just been something wonderful that's kept me sane during this time. In terms of staying with it artistically, I updated my website. I've tried to find new rep in terms of music, monologues, just trying to keep busy so that in terms of the pause that we're on right now, I'm trying to keep my mindset in a way that I'm ready for whenever it comes back. just to jump back in. And I feel like many people are doing that as well, which I think is the correct way to be during this time.
Yeah. The mindset is one of those things that is so important. But I know for when we were going to school, that mindset training and mental health was not really anything people talked about. It's really only come about in the last handful of years that it's been a public thing that people truly address and go, this
I
is
agree.
actually something we need to be paying attention to, especially in our field. I have that question about how it is emotional and emotionally brutal, and it's true. Your mindset is almost everything in this career, especially if you want to have any kind of longevity in this career.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
that in conjunction with the physical part, just the purely doing your skill and being ready to go with your skill whenever it's needed, those are two, but mindset is a massive puzzle piece.
Yes. And it's funny, I wish back in school it was made more apparent that the mindset and anything physical, they can work together to help each
Yeah.
other.
Yeah. If you're feeling better physically, your mental state is better.
Yes, absolutely. And I guess in terms of what I'm looking forward to, I'm looking forward to theater coming back stronger than ever. I'm really hoping, especially being a union actor, I really hope that the union does make sure to take the necessary precautions to keep everyone involved, stage management, back of house, all the actors feeling safe. But also, in terms of the industry itself, I really hope that this pause has made people take the time to evaluate and see the need that there needs to be new art, new works, new stories need to be told. And that I'm hoping that there are more opportunities for individuals of all, colors, shapes, and sizes. I just think rather than just sitting and being stagnant, this is a time for really just taking the time to think about how improvements can be made.
Yeah, for sure. I love your insight on that. And it is time to move on to one of my favorite sections in the interview. I call it the Grease Lightning Round. I am going to ask you a handful of questions. I want you to answer them as quickly and concisely as possible, one after another. Are you ready?
I am ready.
All right, first question. What was the one thing holding you back from committing to a career as an entertainer?
Honestly, not to be cliche, but myself. I've always been one to be very hypercritical of myself, honestly, much to my own detriment. And sometimes I feel it has actually affected my performance. So, in recent years, I've learned to accept that I'm only human. And since then, I've fared much better.
Ah, wonderful insight. And the second question, what is the best piece of advice you have ever received?
Was actually in college. Actually, a professor in my acting emphasis class said, remember that you are an individual, not a caricature. And as I've matured, it has made so much more sense to me because when I was younger, there was always this urge to be what everybody else wants you to be or be what the other side of the table wanted you to be. And I finally accepted I can only be myself.
Yeah. And I love that you said that because that has come up so many times in this podcast, different interviews. And I love that it keeps coming up because that means that is a truly fundamental aspect of what creates a successful career in this industry. And it's so
Yes.
important to pay attention to that.
And I think it's something we need to be educated on. Absolutely.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. A little bit more. It's a tricky one, isn't it? Because when you're younger, we're still figuring out who we are as well, a
Right.
lot of us. So how do you be you when you're not even maybe 100% clear on who you are? And that certainly is a challenge. But to really know that that is a big part of auditioning and being successful is just bringing you to the table. And sometimes I think it needs to go beyond someone just saying the words once or twice, that
Yeah,
to really instill it, like you said.
totally.
Beautiful. And the third question, what is something that is working for you right now? Or if you'd like to go pre-COVID, what was working for you before our industry went on pause?
I know I've said it so many times, but honestly, fitness, it helps me mentally, it helps me physically, it helps me emotionally, especially during the largest parts of quarantine, just getting outside and being able to go for a run or getting just the opportunity to sweat. It just
Mm.
slowly helped me to calm voices in your head that are like, oh God, what do we do next? What's going to happen next? Blah, 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 blah. That's definitely been it for me.
Yeah. And the fourth question, what is your best resource? Whether that is a book, a movie, a YouTube video, maybe a podcast or piece of technology you found is helping your career right now.
I've taken this time to really start watching more TV and film, especially because TV and film so far during this pandemic has actually really tried to find ways to make things work. And it's a part of the industry that I would love to learn more about. Netflix has definitely been a good friend to me. Right
Yeah.
now, we just finished a month ago, we finished Dead to Me with Christina Applegate. I just think it's such an awesome show. And I love that this dark comedy genre, like I think the actors in that just really take it on by the reins and do such an incredible job. I also like looking into taking film and TV classes, and also, yeah, just keeping up with the fitness.
Yeah. And the fifth question, if you had to start your career from scratch, but you still had all the knowledge and experience you've collected from your career in this industry, what would you do or not do? Would you do anything differently, or would you keep it the same?
Oh, that's a hard one. I guess I wouldn't change everything that has happened in general. I think I would have changed how I perceived things myself.
Mm,
Um, I feel if we're going to get back to school, I'm not putting blame, but I don't know if it was made aware. I just feel there were times, and maybe it's every arts education. I just feel there were times, maybe I did it to myself, but I felt this need that like there was competition between myself and my peers. And I don't know that maybe I pressed that upon myself, but I feel that is something that can occur and maybe has occurred for many people in this industry. And what I'm happy with is upon all the journeys that I've taken since then, I learned that it's my journey. I don't need to look at the person next to me. It's just about how I am moving through my career and my process.
yeah, it's my journey. I think you said that perfectly. And I completely agree with you. It is, I think, in of itself, a bit of the nature of an arts program, and especially a very high performing one like the Boston Conservatories. There's a bit of an inherent competitiveness, if you will, or pressure that happens. And I know for myself personally, when I was there, because I was late-ish to starting in this career path. So I was
Right.
really just figuring myself out, and I really needed that place for the training because I was, in a lot of ways, behind the eight ball from a lot of people, and that's okay. And I felt a lot of not being able to keep up, or whatever that's supposed to mean, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But reflecting on it now, you go, it was good. And you're right. I personally would have changed my perception of things. That's really the key right there. And you said that as well, is that it is your journey. You're going to school at the end of the day. You're not
Right.
you are paying to be there. No, people are not paying you.
Exactly.
You are the boss, more or less, because you're paying them. So you take that experience and take that mindset switch and go, I need to pull out of this program what I need for me and concentrate on that. And that's where you're going to find bigger growth. And it's easier said than done, but try your hardest to switch your mind on that you are there to be trained, not to compete.
Very well said, Dane. That's very good. That was very good. I was like, please tell that to
Thank you.
22-year-old me.
I'm telling it to my 22-year-old me. Jeez. But that's the thing. That's the crazy part. You get a little bit older and you go, oh, right. I can see all this hindsight 2020 business. But honestly, for anyone that's listening out there, if you're younger, if you're in those programs, if you're aspiring to go to those programs, you're there to train for you, to make you better. That's the purpose of that program, not so you can be better than your peers. Because here's the deal. You're going to go out to the world and there's going to be people that are in another universe. You know what I mean? So it's not worth it. Comparison is never the way to go.
No.
Work on you. And the last question, what is the golden nugget knowledge drop you've learned from your successful career in this industry that you'd like to leave with everyone?
I would say bouncing off that feeling of needing to be competitive. At the end of the day, we all entered this industry because of a love of what we are doing. And I think the golden nugget is to always find the heart in the work. And if you if you're finding, like we talked about, being in a show for too long, if you're really finding that it's becoming a struggle to go to work, like no one's forcing you to be there. We knew that being artists, it's for love of the work.
Yeah,
So
very
maybe
well
you need
said.
to, spread your wings and find it somewhere else. And there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, yep. You'll find your feet every time. It's a great thing about
Exactly.
necessity, isn't it?
Yes.
And to wrap up this interview, it is time to give yourself a plug. Dave, where can we find you? How do our listeners connect with you? Is there anything you want to promote?
Yeah, so you can find me on Instagram. My handle is @david.a.vogel. I also have a website. It's www.daveanthonyvogel.com. And I am on Facebook as well.
Beautiful. And for everyone listening out there, I have put the links to everything Dave just said into the description of this episode so you can easily connect with him. Dave, thank you so much for being here and sharing your journey through this crazy industry. It's been a pleasure to have you on.
Dane, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for joining us today. Don't miss an episode. I have a new guest 7 days a week. Every guest drops more value and insight than any other resource out there. So make sure you hit that subscribe button. If you enjoyed this episode, we'd love to hear from you. Leave us a rating and review. Also, be sure to head over to youbookeditpodcast.com and join our free email community where we dig deep into a continually growing resource of truly actionable things you can be doing right now to help you advance your entertainment career. All the best to you. We'll see you tomorrow.